Hello, everyone. I'm really looking forward to running a session on the wonderful world of the Microsoft Power Platform. I've been involved in building Power Platform solutions for 3 or 4 years, although when I started with it, it wasn't actually called the Power Platform. And that will, I guess, will be revealed to some extent as we go through this presentation. So what I'm going to do is we've got a lot to get through. So what I'm going to do is I am going to start sharing my screen and we'll get cracking on the presentation. Now, the good news with this presentation is that there is actually there will be no PowerPoint at all at any point in this presentation. Now, the bad news is that I've actually created an app that actually mimics PowerPoint. So there's the good news and the bad news. So the amazing Microsoft Power Platform, I genuinely really love making things using the Power Platform. And I've got lots of content out there. Now, I'm going to do a quick run through about how this session is going to run. We've just done the introduction to this session. I'll do a little bit about me, but not too much. Then what we're going to do is we're going to look at an app that actually describes the Power Platform universe, because it's important for us to understand what makes up the elements of the Power Platform. Then we're going to do this really cool survey. So if you've got an iPhone, then you can go to the you can kind of click on here and you'll be able to, it'll take you through to the website and so on. Otherwise, we'll go directly through to a website which has got a form. But what's really cool is it kind of demonstrates really simply the whole of the Power Platform in one go. I'm going to do a bit of a meet the team thing because I want to sort of do a little piece where we talk about the various products that make up the Power Platform. A little bit on product history, because sometimes understanding a bit of history is helpful. Some discussion will take place as we go through this presentation around what is low code and no code, and the products are different, so there's different degrees to which that is true. I'm going to show you some cool stuff using the Power Platform, but I hope that that everything that you see today is cool. I'm going to talk a little bit about the fact it's a family thing. So getting the products to work with each other is the power of the Power Platform. So if you only work in one tool, it might be Power BI or it might be Powerapp. That's quite good, but it's really when you start to use all of the products together that you get the best value out of them. I am going to take a very brief foray into licensing because it's important to know that they have nuances associated with them. We're also maybe just going to take a quick peek at governance, but we may not have a huge amount of time for that. And I'm also going to talk about this strange new kid on the block called Dataverse for Teams. And finally, I'll actually talk about how it is we learn more about the Power Platform. So on with the show. So what we're actually looking at here right now is this is an app. It's not a PowerPoint presentation. And because it isn't a PowerPoint presentation, I can do lots of interesting things with it. And that includes kind of going onto this About Me thing and then going through to a link. And this link is going to open an app for me. And what the app does allows me to, well, talk about me, but really talk about my journey into the Power Platform. So I started off, I am an accountant, and as an accountant, I use a lot of Excel. When I used Excel, there's a thing called Power Query. It's a little bit about the history of Power BI is this thing that they created called Power Query, which allows you to extract, transform, and load data. But it is the start point for every Power BI report that you'll ever likely to write. I then joined Biffa and brought Power BI to them as a greenfield site, and and um, and I started building lots of things along the way, which included building lots of oddities, which included this thing here, which is British birds. And I also did a thing called Puppy Finder. It was my first it was a kind of fun Power BI thing, but it connected to the UK Kennel Club, so that I could actually work out where in the country these puppies were, and so that we could find the right one for us. I've got a link to that, but there's lots of other things that we'll get to see later on. Now, I then stopped with Biffa. I saw Powerapp came onto my tenant, and I looked at it. I thought, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. I genuinely, that was my my reaction to it, and I got really into it. And then from there, I joined the Parliamentary Digital Service, and all that while I was building my YouTube channel, which you can obviously look up. And I built my website and what have you. I don't use data spinners anymore. I use Power Platform Learn. I then started training on behalf of Microsoft, and I also created a course with Pluralsight, and it was on Power BI as it happens. And then I got, I've been fortunate enough to be nominated as an MVP, and I have been for the last 12 months. And it's a great privilege to be able to be an MVP. You get to find out a few more things a little bit earlier, but it's just a wonderful recognition as someone who at that time didn't actually have any Microsoft qualifications. So that's a little bit about me, but I think that the point is not so much it's about me, it's about really anyone who is coming to anyone that is coming to the Power Platform. It's something you can do. You don't have to have been a developer to have done this. So, excuse me, I'm just going to jump through onto this. So this is now the app that allows me to describe the Power Platform universe. So it's a really, really important app. It's certainly, if there was any one thing that I wanted you to take away from these the time that we've got together, it is what I show you on the screen here now. And so what we'll do is we'll go through all of the products of the Power Platform. So here we are in the left-hand corner, a little human being looking out at the universe as a whole. And what we get to see is we get to see the internet. And once we see the internet, we can actually go inside the internet, and we can connect with Azure, which is effectively Microsoft's platform in the cloud. That represents all of their data centers, etc. And when we authenticate to Azure, we're actually moving into our Microsoft tenant. Now, so at that point in time, within a Microsoft tenant, you can have teams, and teams all have workspaces, and you can also have Power BI reports. That exists at that level within the organization. Now, it becomes a little bit clearer when I start to describe the other elements of the Power Platform. So we have our first player in the Power Platform. This is Power BI. So the interesting thing about Power BI is Power BI does not live inside these things called environments. What lives inside environments are connections, and these are connections to Twitter, to SQL, to Oracle, to Salesforce, to the Common Data Service, lots and lots of different connections. And it is your apps that use those connections. But look very closely and you'll see that the environments, the Power BI reports do not sit inside those environments. They are separate from them. And you can argue that both ways, that actually you could argue it's a good thing as well, because that means that the Power BI reports can connect to lots of different things. I'm sure that there may be a time when there's a little bit more proximity, but the fact of the matter is, at the moment, Power BI reports sit outside your environments. So we've seen the second player of the Power Platform, these Power Apps, and we'll see lots of examples of Power Apps as we go through this presentation. So as well as apps inside your environment, you also have Power Automate flows. Now, Power Auto, and I'll get to talk about what each of the products does. You also have Power Virtual Agents. These are just, well, I say not just, these are bots. These are things that you can ask a question to, and it will give you a range of answers based on your questions. But they can do lots of really clever things. They can run flows. That you can build them out to be quite complex things that you can ask lots of different questions of, and of course they because they're bots, they are available 24/7. I think that's the real power of those bots. Now, I will just delve very quickly into the apps themselves. This is actually where this particular document originally started, was me trying to describe apps, and I think it helps describe what an app is. So within an app, you have screens, and within screens, you have objects, lots of different objects. It could be a label. In fact, we're looking at objects now. We can see there's essentially lots and lots of labels. We can see there's pictures. That's all there really is in this. Down in the bottom left-hand side, it's actually an icon. It is a type of object, but there are lots of different types of objects. And in the course that I've put together, there are actually, it takes me 10 hours of video to talk about all the different types of objects that there are. There are quite a lot of them, and they've got quite a lot of nuances to them. Now, objects have properties. It could be the size, it could be the height, it could be the width, it could be the color of the font, it could be the the font size, it could be all sorts of different things. They have properties depending on what they are, and those properties are controlled by functions. And once you've created your wonderful app, you can then share it with the rest of your organization. So that is the Power Platform universe in a nutshell. Megan, do we have any questions at this point in time? Any questions that are coming in?
Not at the moment. If anyone does have any questions, there's the chat or the Q&A functionality here in Zoom, so do pop them in, and I will ask Rory them as we go. So do pop them in if you have any questions, but not at the moment. Rory, carry on.
Brilliant. Okay, so the next part of this, it's going to be, well, like it's one of the most fun bits of this actually. And so what we're going to do is we are all going to participate in something which effectively demonstrates the whole of the Power Platform, maybe minus the Power Virtual Agent. So what we're going to do is we are going to go to, you can either do it via the QR code on the screen, or you can go to powerplatformlearn.com. And so I'm going to type it in powerplatformlearn.com. That'll take me to this screen. Then I need to go to the resources. And within the resources, I've got this thing called a snap survey. And it's just a survey where you ask a question, I ask a question, and you either say yes or no. So maybe my question is something like, have you bought all your presents for Christmas? Now, in fact, that's a really bad one, isn't it? Well, the one we did earlier on was, do you like Marmite? And I think that's probably a better one. That's something that'll kind of split people. Now, don't just answer it just yet. I just want to put it in context that why are we doing this, this strange thing? And the reason we're going to do this is because I've actually written a Power BI report, and what the Power BI report does is it actually looks at those there. I think we've had a few come in just now, actually, but I will get you guys, because I'm actually going to go through. So this is my Power BI report, and it looks at it, and every time someone puts something in, I can hit the refresh on that, and you can see these things are changing all the time. So we've got 7 people there, but we're going to do it again. Megan, if there is anything that is in your mind that you would like to ask, a yes/no question, by all means, come up with it, because we're going to zap this survey in just a moment. So what actually really happens here is that a flow runs, and then that pushes the data into a SQL database that is visualized using Power BI. But what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to show you that there's an app that I've got in front of me that enables me to actually have Power BI that is sitting within Power Apps. And the reason why this is cool is when it gets to the end of 10 seconds, it actually refreshes the Power BI report, which is kind of tricky to do. Now, as well as that, if I click Clear Survey, what it's actually going to do is actually going to fire a SQL query at that database. And guess what? It just runs a truncate statement, and we have no responses left anymore. So what I'm now going to do is I'm just going to try and think of another question that will split the audience, and I'll say something like, I'll just say something like, have you ever built a Power BI report? So I'm going to go onto the survey, go onto this Snap survey. Do you agree with the statement? I'm going to say yes, because I have built a Power BI report. I'm going to click submit. I have submitted it. And now I need to go to this. And when it gets to the end of its 10 seconds, it's going to zap the Power BI report, and then it's going to give at least one response. So we have lots of people that have built Power BI reports, which is brilliant. And so what exactly happened just then? So just in putting it in context, we have a Power App. Inside the Power App, we have a Power BI report. But the bit which has flow in is, if I go back to this, I actually go onto the, not onto that, close that and go onto the flow. What we'll actually be able to do is we'll be able to see the flow and the fact that it's actually run. You can see all the flows that have taken place. If I go to all runs, I can see lots and lots of runs. They're not particularly interesting looking runs, but if I go to edit flow, then what we'll see is what actually happens. So when a new response is submitted from the form that is called Snap Survey, what it does is it inserts a row based on what has been submitted in that statement. That's as simple as that. And what we've seen is that it seemed to be able to cope with the volume. You can see it's all succeeded, and that's why we were able to get the responses that we had earlier on. So I think it's quite good fun, actually. I could stop here, actually, but so that is just a little exercise that we've done to see them in action, see that there's actually a possibility here of actually combining these products. I'm now going to talk about the sort of meet the team element of this, and that's where I just talk about the products themselves. So on the top left-hand side, we have Power Apps. Now, Power Apps is what they call a low-code, no-code framework, which allows you to build business productivity applications on top of your Office 365 tenant. And throughout this whole presentation, we never leave Power Apps at all. So you can see there's a lot of scope to be able to, there's a lot of scope for us to be able to have interactivity and so on. Now, I'm not sure what's going to come up next. So Power BI. Power BI is all about data visualization. And I think what I'll try and do as we go through this is maybe show you, some slightly more interesting data visualizations that we could look at. In fact, I'll just do that one now. So data visualization, which one could we look at? I'm just going to go onto this. I know this on this about me, that I've actually got a link on this, and what it takes me off to is a Power BI report. Now the Power BI report takes this data from this eplreview.com place, and it's a really pretty unstructured set of data. But what this thing does is it allows me to deconstruct the data, which then allows me to investigate the data in lots of interesting ways. So I could do something like I can sort of filter on the the goals scored, and then that means that everything is filtered. You can see it's Man City here. I can also sort on the quantum of goals scored, which would allow me to, I can do different things. There's hopefully a drill through here. I can drill through to the team itself. And then once I'm in the team, you can see that Man City versus Stoke, they scored 7 goals against them. I can then jump myself out to Google, and I take a look at a report with regards to that match. But that's the sheer pace that I can do all this with that makes it really powerful. So I'm now going to jump back to the Meet the Team. Power BI is a wonderful tool that you can use to enable you to understand large volumes of data. So you can get to millions, billions, and trillions of rows of data, and Power BI is capable of dealing with that. So I'm just going to do a time check. I think we're doing good for time, which is wonderful. Please, any questions that come in, by all means, ask those questions. Now, Microsoft Power Automate, I've made the mistake of actually of writing it down as flow. Now that's a bad move. It's actually been called Power Automate for quite a bit of time now, actually, and that's kind of, so we have this Power, Power X means that you've got the different elements of the Power Platform. So flows are, Power Automate flows are essentially, essentially, if I perhaps describe what a flow is, it is a combination of something with a trigger and an action. And there are a range of triggers and a very, very, very wide range of actions. So when the trigger is initiated, then the action is performed. So what we saw earlier on was that when the form was submitted, when that yes/no form was submitted, then the flow was triggered, and then the flow picked up the information and pushed that information into a database. Now, there are lots and lots of things you can do with flow. You can look out for tweets and then do things based on that. You can wait for records to be created within I don't know, a Sharepoint list or the common data service, lots of different places, and for that to be the action. And you can do a lot of things. One thing that's quite neat is to do a scheduled one. So that's on a daily basis or on a 3-hourly basis. You can have your Power Automate flows running. So it means that you can, and by all means, that we can go deep into all these, but this is a really high level review of this area. So there we are. That's Power Automate. We've talked about Power Apps, and then finally, the one that I know the least about is actually the Power Virtual Agents. And these are essentially chatbots that are effectively available 24/7, that have the ability to interrogate data sets and actually provide responses. You can actually do bookings with them. But as we'll see later on, that they're probably the sort of thing that you either go all in with Power Virtual Agents or not in at all, and that's probably reflected in the licensing as well. So that's the Meet the Team piece. Looking at the product history, the product history maybe of Power Apps is that we started with Power Apps maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I think it's either 4 or exactly 5 years ago that we started off with it. And it has developed considerably in that time, although the core of Power Apps has remained the same. I thoroughly recommend, in fact, I'm going to do a little demo here. This is how simple it is to make a Power App. So if I go to office.com and I go to SharePoint, wherever that is, if I go to SharePoint, this is where I started with Power Apps, and I invite you to do the same. So if I go on to something like USA 2020, because I know it's a list, what I can do is click on Power Apps and then create an app, and then do and I'll do computer world, and I can click create on that, and that will build me a 3-screen app. It's that simple. This app will genuinely work. I'm not actually sure which data set we were looking at. I did it that quickly, but it's kind of a good way through having created a 3-screen app for us. And it's super simple to do. I'm sort of kind of playing for time, because I know that any second now on the left hand side you'll see the screens coming in, and there we are. I've done it a good few times, and that is an app that would work on your phone as well. So if you had the app on your phone, you'd be able to use that. So it's just finishing itself up here, and we can see that we can actually theoretically add a new state into the United States. I'll add the computer world state into the United States. In fact, I'll just copy and paste. It was actually to do with the votes in the United States. I was having a bit of fun there, and I'll just click the yes on that, and you can actually see that if I type in computer, then computer world pops up. That's how simple it is to create these, and you can see that you've got this ability to see what all the objects are. But I haven't got time to go into any more detail on that. I digressed substantially there, but I just want for you guys to understand that it is really actually quite easy to build an app. So Powerapp started about 5 years ago. Power Automate, now its history lies in logic apps, but Power Automate is much easier to create a Power Automate flow than it is to create logic apps, because they exist at a kind of enterprise level, whereas Power Automate flows exist one level down from that. So you can kind of make personal flows effectively, as well as ones for your organization. Power Virtual Agents appeared on the scene in about March of 2020. So it's relatively new, and you'll see less material on that, partly because there are possibly less, like everyone's written Power BI reports, everyone understands it, but there is less need for like Power Virtual Agents than there is for potentially Power BI reports. So we'll see that later on. Power BI appeared on the scene, I'm going to say something like 4 or 5 years ago. So they all appeared at that time, but all of these products have been developing over time. So any questions at this point, Megan?
No, everyone seems very quiet. So if you do have any questions for Rory, do pop them in the Q&A or the chat, and we will ask them.
Yeah, well, there's a test at the end, so you don't get to go home unless you've got 90% or more in the test. So keep watching. So I just wanted to kind of pull up this thing about low code, no code. So of all of the products that are out there, I want to talk about the extent to which they are low code, no code. So if you take something like Power Apps, is it low code, no code? Well, it can be. It can be low code, but it can also be quite complex. But to kind of understand, it's a bit like saying, like, can anyone write a novel? Well, probably not. But could you write a little story? Well, yes. And with the work that I've done with Power Apps for Kids, we've demonstrated that children can and do create their own apps. It's perfectly possible for them to do it, and it's perfectly possible for them to understand what they're doing. So Power Apps is a good example of low code, no code. Power Automate is an interesting one because the templates are brilliant in Power Automate, but your ability to move to the next level, it kind of jumps from being really straightforward and drag and drop and all those sorts of wonderful things, but then to move to the next level, there is a bit of a leap that is required. Having said that, the amount of things that you can actually do with flows with no code at all is actually quite significant. So we've got Power Virtual Agents as well. Power Virtual Agents are low code, but but you do need to understand what you're actually doing, and there's a little bit less material on that at this time. And then the final one is probably the one where it's got the most gotchas, and that's Power BI. Now, we've seen that lots of people have created Power BI reports, but I would suggest that most people would agree with me in saying that not all of their Power BI reports are amazing. And some of them, if you'd known something about Power BI at the time when you first started putting it together, then you might have changed how you actually wrote it. So I certainly believe that now, if I was writing them, the way in which I would in particular construct the data model would be different to the way in which I may have done it in the past. And so I think that Power BI is probably not very no code, in my opinion. If you want to be truly successful with it, it's, you do need to be quite studious with that particular product.
We've got a few questions coming in now, Rory.
Yeah.
So Mark Smith said, do these queries have to be within an Azure data sheet, or can it query on-prem data too?
If you're querying on-prem data, you need to have an on-prem data gateway. So I think there's two flavors of that. One is a personal one, which essentially sits on your computer, and there's also a kind of corporate one. But even those ones need to sit on, like a virtual computer, and then they kind of have a tunnel through to your on-prem data. So there's lots of examples where people connect to their on-prem data using Power BI.
Perfect. Daniel said, can I get a Powerapp gallery to dynamically load different SharePoint lists or document libraries? I think I have loading a form with a parameter, which is the name of the document library you want to display in the gallery. Maybe go one step further and make the site and library both parameters when you first load the screen with the gallery.
Obviously, that's quite a technical point, but I think that what I tend to do with some of these things where and the answer is probably no, in a nutshell. But the other thing to do is always, when you're starting to come across something that has a level of complexity to it, that the reality is you don't wake up in the morning thinking, hey, wouldn't it be great to connect these things in that way? There's usually a reason why you want to do it. And if you actually dig into the reason why you want to do that particular thing, the answer may come out there. I mean, for example, there'd be a reason why they are separate lists and why they aren't just one list, for example. And I think the other side of things is that, bear in mind, SharePoint lists, they are lists. They are not, it's not a database or anything like that. So there's a certain amount of things that you can and can't do with them. Having said that, like I could go on for ages with this. You could create collections based on the lists at the start. It depends on what you're trying to, achieve, what your whole objective is. So that's probably a little bit technical for this session.
Perfect. And then the last one we've got at the moment is from David. He said, hi, Rory, what are the benefits of using CDS Dataverse over a SharePoint list? I currently use the latter to track inventory. Thanks.
SharePoint lists aren't databases. They don't have the ability to create relationships between list tables. So, for example, if you had, I don't know, let's just say you had categories of stock. So you had a categories table and the actual stock items themselves. You could create a quasi relationship, but it wouldn't be a real relationship. And in the common data service, you can create real relationships and you can navigate those relationships. In fact, I don't know if there's any examples here of in fact, this entire thing here is all built on the common data service. So as I'm kind of jumping through things, I'm actually leveraging the relationships in order to be able to surface different things here. So modules relate to courses, lessons relate to modules. So when I'm clicking on various things, I'm getting things to fire up. The other thing with the common data, rather with Dataverse, is that it has significantly better ability to control who gets to see what. Whereas with SharePoint, you are tremendously limited. Your ability to create solutions, you can't create solutions with SharePoint. It's just, they are unrelated really to the apps as such. Whereas the Common Data Service is fundamentally a part of your environment. Your database for the Common Data Service lives inside the same environment as your apps, and therefore you can create solutions. I could literally pick up what I've got here, and it doesn't just take the Canvas app. It'll take the app. It'll take any flows that relate to it. It'll take all the entities themselves, all of the tables that underpin this. They all go at the same time, and everything works. Whereas with SharePoint, you've got limited. You've only got a limited application lifecycle management that you can do with it. There. Okay.
We've just had another one come in just before we move on to the next bit. It says, do you need premium licensing to use CDS as a data source for a Powerapp?
Yes and no. If you use Dataverse for Teams, you don't, because you're using Dataverse for Teams, but Dataverse for Teams has limitations, and so therefore, you don't get to do as much with it. It's got you can't. It might be worth just following on the course that I put together on that in order to kind of work through that. And so yeah, in fact, just repeat the question now. I don't feel I fully answered it.
It was, do you need premium licensing to use CDS as a data source for a Powerapp?
Yeah. So if you use Dataverse for Teams, the answer's no. You just need a Teams license. But if you want to use it in any other guise, then yes, you do. If you want to experiment with it, you can use something called a community plan, and that means that you have a personal environment, but you can't share with anyone or anything like that. But yes, look, it's cool, but you've got to move on to the next level. There is a thing called a per app license. It's a bit cheaper, but it only would be worthwhile in certain use cases.
Perfect. That was all of the questions for now.
Good.
Thank you.
So now we're going to move on to looking at cool stuff using the Power Platform. Now, there are lots of things I could kind of tell you about and show you and so on. I could, but the one that worked quite well earlier on when I was playing around with it was the Powerapp's translator. But just bear in mind that everything that you're seeing on the screen today is a Powerapp. Or a Power, or a Power BI report. So your ability to create cool things is limited predominantly by your imagination. And this was what my imagination came up with when I was teaching in. I'm kind of being I was lucky enough to teach the Power Platform in Italy. And I went around a museum there, and so many of the things were written in Italian. I was thinking, oh, this is such a shame. It'd be so cool if you had an app that was able to read text and things like that. I thought, well, why don't I give it a go? Because I wasn't busy that evening. And so here I am about to come on the screen. Hey, there's me with my green screen. So what I can do with this app, and this app is obviously phone shaped because I knew I would. Let's just see how well this actually works. Now, I'm actually asking a lot of it. And do you know what I'm going to do? Is I'm going to use the thing that I used earlier on, and I'm going to use this book here. Now, there's a lot of reflection going on there, but let me just see if this works. I'll take the photo, then I'll try and extract the text from that photo. Player's Handbook, bit of a shame there, but you can see that I've just now edited that text. And I'm now going to translate it into a different language. So maybe we'll do Spanish, click on Translate Me, and it's used the connector that is associated with the app and that lives inside this environment, and it's managed to translate it. And if I actually click the play icon here, I'll use the same connector in order to speak that that particular translation. So I'll just do that again. I can do it in Finnish. In fact, I can actually click Translate Me, and it actually comes out in Finnish now. And if you click, so that was in so testing your Finnish there. But actually, when you do it on a phone, it's really great experience, because you can like, the phone cameras are a bit better, if I'm honest. So, but you can really sweat this thing. It was translating some pretty big things when I was working with it. I don't know how well it would work with this. I'll just see what it does. Extracting the text, but you can see it's going to have a go at it. In fact, it's not been successful at all on this occasion, but it is actually a reflective surface as well. But but hopefully this gives you an idea of that we can go quite far with this particular product. So that was cool stuff using Powerapp. The Power BI, in fact, this course guide is, let me go close on that. The course guide I put together is, I quite like this. And what it is it is a Power BI report that looks at the transcripts from the course, and it allows me to do a search on any word that I say within the course, and I can click on that, and I can actually then I can then search in there, and what it will do is it will tell me all of the places where I say the word licensing, and I can then click on that, and it will take me through directly to that video in which I say the word licensing. Now, it's not quite clever enough to take me to 7 minutes and 31, but if I go to 7 minutes and 31, then all being well, I actually say the word licensing. So 7 minutes, and and the reality is that, let me just go to CC English. Type moment of truth. It's on licensing. I hope you think that's cool. I think it's cool. So this is the course that I put together. It's a chance for me to do a bit of advertising, but I've actually made this course completely free. It is 230 lessons plus of content to do with Canvas apps, and it takes you all the way through. There are 270,000 words. There are 30 hours. There is 30 hours of content here, and I would love it if you signed up for this course. And if you want to do that, just go to powerplatformlearn.com and then just go to courses, and then you can click on the course that you're most interested in. So that's the course guide. So I'm just trying to show you different cool things that you can do. We also saw that you could make, I'm just conscious of time here, not much time. So I'm just going to jump on to, it's a family thing. So we've seen already that you can get things to work together. So you can have Power BI inside Power Apps. You can also have Power Apps inside Power BI. So your imagination is something that I would challenge you guys on here. Licensing corner, I think I'm going to be really brief on this. There is an expense to using Power Apps using the common data service, but it has a value, and there is and it has a productivity value, and I would suggest to you that it is worth investigating that to see whether it is worthwhile in your organization. Now, Power BI, it's got so with Power Apps, the per user license is about $40 a month, but you can have an unlimited number of apps, or you can have a per app license, which is $10 a month, which really gives you 2 apps. And then, as well as that, you can have Power Apps for free, but it would only use Office 365 connectors and things like SharePoint lists and so on. Now, as far as Power BI is concerned, you're at sort of $10 a month for a pro license, and then about $5,000 a month if you want a premium, but you'll know if you need a premium license anyway. Power Automate, relatively, for what it is, it's relatively inexpensive. I'll just leave it at that. And Power Virtual Agents, it is effectively $1,000 per 2,000 hits. That's kind of the way in which it works out. So it's just rattling through licensing. On the governance side, we have there are two places to do your governance. You have one place which is related to Power BI governance, but there is another place which is admin.powerplatform.com. That takes you to the admin centers for well, actually would take you to all of them, but it's also worth remembering that it administers those environments as well. But I'm gonna fall off the end of the world here if I'm not careful. Now, a very quick point about Dataverse for Teams. So this is your opportunity to build apps using Dataverse. I thoroughly recommend it, and I've actually written a little course on that, and it's going to be growing over time. And then just rattling forward, how to learn more about the Power Platform. I know that I've incorrectly clicked that. How to learn more about the Power Platform. Well, there are lots of ways. There's loads of people creating videos and so on. You can go to my website, powerplatformlearn.com, and then you can go to the free courses that I've made available to you. That's just another URL for it. There's lots of user groups. So this is just one user group, but there are loads and loads of user groups. And I thoroughly recommend that you use those. I also recommend that you use Twitter as well, because if you want to be most up to date, Twitter is the best way to be up to date. And also there is the Microsoft training places. There's the Powerapp's blog and so on. And you can navigate to those via the products themselves. So that really takes me to the end of this presentation. We like to cover the whole of the Power Platform in the time we've had is kind of challenging. Apologies that we didn't really go into bots. It's not a strong suit for me. And finally, are there any questions before we close off?
That was brilliant. Thank you, Rory. I haven't got any questions at the moment. Obviously, if anybody does have any, pop them in the Q&A or in the chat, and we can get them answered before we leave. But that was a really good overview and dig into those Power Platform or the Power Platform. Thank you, Rory.
So I'm just going to do a stop share and say hi to everyone. Yeah, so thanks everyone for coming on. I hope you find this useful and that you maybe have got hopefully a slightly better sense as to what this platform is all about. Yeah, I'm just going to have a quick look on the chat myself and just see what's coming through. Once again, I hope you're enjoying all the sessions that have been put on today, and I hope to see you somewhere on a Power Platform call at some point in the future. Good luck with your Power Platform journey.
Thank you very much, Rory.
Thank you.